two nations are born. One land is disputed. This is the First Indo-Pakistan War. This is Kashmir, and this is our story. In 1947, British India split into two new and independent nations. They were both called simply India and Pakistan. We'll get to why that's confusing in a bit. What isn't is that this map doesn't have a piece that fits quite right here. See, when Britain left, they didn't just pack up and go. They handed over power to these guys, a bunch of local kings and queens and princes who ruled areas known as princely states. There were 565 of these states, and each one had to choose which of these new nations they wanted to join or if they wanted to be completely independent. Now, this particular piece of land was called Jammu and Kashmir, and it had a bit of a problem. See, the ruler of this state was called the Maharaja, and he happened to be Hindu. But the majority of his people were Muslim. When the subcontinent was split, many thought that this state would choose to join Pakistan because of that Muslim majority. But Hari Singh, the Maharaja, had other plans. He wanted his state to be independent, at least at first. But there was another problem. See, those mountains are nice and tall, but they don't stop folks from coming through them. And the neighbor to the west wasn't too happy with the Maharaja's decision. These guys, various Pashtun tribal militias from what we today call Pakistan, wanted this state to join Pakistan, and they weren't going to take no for an answer. So come October 1947, they crossed into Kashmir to force the Maharaja's hand. Now, the Maharaja was scared. He knew that his army wasn't prepared for such an attack, and he was desperate for help. His first choice, India. Remember, the leader of this state was Hindu, and he was hoping to form an alliance with Hindu-majority India. The price: joining India. Now, not everyone in the state was thrilled about this idea, especially these guys. The Muslim Conference, they thought that the Maharaj had sold them out, and they started a full-scale rebellion. Fighting erupted across the territory. People fled the violence in droves. By October, more than 100,000 refugees had poured into Srinagar, the capital city, and things were looking bleak. But the Maharaja had made his decision. On October, he signed what's called the Instrument of Accession, basically making Kashmir part of India. And the very next day, Indian troops flew into They arrived just in time. That night, the fighting came to the city's outskirts. So now we have two armies facing off on one tiny patch of land, both claiming it as their own. And somewhere inside those lines are these guys, ordinary people trying to navigate the most extraordinary of circumstances. It's really important to understand what was happening in this moment. This wasn't some obscure mountain pass. This was the Himalayas. If you look at a map of Kashmir today, you can see this region for yourself. Look familiar? Yeah, me too. The next few months saw fierce fighting across those mountains. The First Indo-Pak War had begun. All told, India deployed around 200,000 troops into Kashmir, while Pakistan deployed closer to 100,000. Fighting took place along rivers, sometimes called the lifeline of Kashmir, including this one, the war also raged across the high ridges of the mountains. These included places like this one, which changed hands several times before being captured by Pakistani forces in May 1949. This was brutal fighting. Soldiers clashed in close quarters in caves and tunnels. There were ambushes and infiltration tactics, and the entire time, thousands upon thousands of civilians were caught in the middle. As the fighting intensified, so did the refugee crisis. More than 500,000 people had fled their homes. And then came this, a massacre in the town of Nar, where Pakistani proxies killed more than 200 Hindus. Then the Indian Air Force retaliated with a bombing run against Pakistani positions. These sorts of attacks became commonplace. Civilian areas were bombed. Civilians were killed. entire villages were razed to the ground. By January 1949, the war had reached a bloody stalemate. Neither side could make any significant gains. People were exhausted. The subcontinent had suffered enough. So they went to the United Nations and asked them to broker a ceasefire, which they did. On January, the guns fell silent. The UN even sent a military observer mission to oversee the whole thing. But the question remained, how do you split a region along religious lines? They started by drawing a line of control that split Kashmir between these two nations. Today, we call it the LOC, the line of control. As for the rest of Kashmir, well, that's still a mess. Technically, the region is still under India's control, but these areas, what we call Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, are administered by Pakistan. The UN plan called for a referendum to decide the fate of the region. That referendum never happened. Both sides continued to claim all of Kashmir as their own, so the war ended, but Kashmir remains contested to this day. But if you think that's complicated, try this on for size. During the partition of India, there were 565 princely states. You heard that number, right? 565. Each of them had to choose between India and Pakistan. Many joined India, some joined Pakistan, and others stayed independent. But what happens when one of those independent states gets attacked by one of those other states that just so happens to be armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons? Welcome to the world of geopolitics. You may remember the year 1947. Two new nations are born, India and Pakistan. Just 2 years later, they're at war. That's right. The First Indo-Pakistani War breaks out in 1947. The reason? The disputed region of Kashmir. Now, let's shift gears a bit. The year is 1957. India and Pakistan are still technically at war. They're fighting in Kashmir. But here's the twist. They're also fighting in a different place, East Pakistan. 'Cause here's the thing, in 1947, when India and Pakistan were carved out of the former British Raj, they weren't exactly on the same page. The borders were a bit of a mess. I mean, there's only so many ways you can slice up a subcontinent. But hold on, the situation in East Pakistan is starting to boil over. The majority of people living there are speaking their own language, Bengali, and feeling a bit disconnected from the rest of Pakistan. Enter India. They're supporting the Bengalis in their struggle for independence. So now we have India supporting rebels in East Pakistan. No wonder tensions are high. India and Pakistan keep poking each other in various places. Think of it like two kids arguing over a toy. But instead of a toy, it's this whole region here, Jammu and Kashmir. Fast forward to 1965. The border disputes are still unresolved. Tensions rise again, and India and Pakistan find themselves at war once more. They're fighting hard and they're fighting everywhere. In Kashmir and in Punjab, even in Rajasthan. But guess what? Neither side really makes any substantial gains. It's a stalemate. They're back to square one. But the story doesn't end there. The border conflicts continue into 1971. The situation in East Pakistan reaches a boiling point, and Bangladesh is born. Yes, that Bangladesh. India backs the new nation, and Pakistan, well, they don't exactly take it well. They start fighting again. This time with full force. And guess what? Once again, neither side comes out on top. You might be sensing a pattern here. Throughout history, it seems like these two neighbors just can't catch a break. The wars over Kashmir don't end. The borders remain a mess, and the conflicts keep flaring up. Fast forward a bit to 1999. India and Pakistan find themselves in a standoff once again. This time in a place called Kargil. The fighting is intense. But here's the thing. They're both nuclear-armed nations. It's a dangerous game they're playing. Here's the deal. The situation remains tense to this day. The borders are still a mess, and the conflicts keep flaring up. But we've got to remember one crucial detail. These are two nuclear-armed nations. We're talking about weapons of mass destruction here. The stakes couldn't be higher. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why haven't they sorted this out yet? Well, there are multiple reasons. For starters, both countries have had multiple changes in leadership since 1947. That's a lot of new leaders to convince to compromise. Plus, Kashmir has become a bit of a political football. Both countries use Kashmir to score points against each other. It's a way to rally the public and gain support. The war in Kashmir began with a signature. It continues with a silence broken only by gunfire.